What would you do if you discovered your boss's family was trying to kill his unborn child? That was the question May Rivera would ask herself again and again. But at that moment, she didn't think. She just froze, eyes locked on the thin white powder swirling at the bottom of the porcelain cup. The tea she'd just served to Mrs. Catherine Montgomery, 8 months pregnant with the next heir to one of the largest pharmaceutical empires in America. Her fingers trembled so badly the saucer rattled against the countertop. The tea still steamed. Harmless, innocent, except for the powder. It wasn't sugar. It wasn't milk residue. May had seen that same dust before. Her heart thudded once, twice. Then everything inside her went still. If she was right, someone had just tried to poison the billionaire's wife. May? Catherine's soft voice floated from the living room. Is my tea ready? May forced herself to breathe. Yes, ma'am. Coming. Her voice didn't sound like hers. It came out thin, careful. Her palms were damp, her pulse hammering under her skin. She turned to the sink, dumping the tea quickly and rinsing it away before the woman could see her panic. Her reflection in the window looked like a ghost. Stay calm, she whispered. Just stay calm. But calm was the last thing she felt. That morning had started like any other. Breakfast for Mr. James Montgomery, toast, egg whites, black coffee, quick dusting in the main hall before the housekeeper made her rounds, then a grocery run for Catherine's pregnancy cravings. Nothing out of the ordinary, until she stepped into the guest room where Miss Victoria Montgomery had stayed overnight. May remembered seeing a small amber bottle lying beneath the bed. She picked it up, expecting perfume, but the label froze her blood. Aconitine, wolfsbane extract, highly toxic. Inside the cap was a folded note written in neat cursive. 3 drops in warm liquid, tasteless. Causes natural miscarriage within 48 hours. May's breath had caught. She dropped the bottle back to the floor, her chest tight. At first she wanted to run, to tell someone, anyone. But who would believe her? A maid accusing the billionaire's sister of attempted murder? That's why, when she saw the white residue in the cup now, she didn't scream. She didn't run. She simply stood there, realizing the nightmare was real, and Victoria was behind it. She carried a new cup of untouched tea to Catherine, whose face glowed with gentle tiredness. Catherine smiled the way kind people smile, without calculation. You're a blessing, May, she said softly, holding her belly. I don't know what I'd do without you. May tried to smile back, but her throat closed up. Just doing my job, ma'am. Her job. If only it were that simple. The Montgomery mansion was a place where walls had eyes and wealth had ears. Every whisper traveled faster than footsteps. Richard Montgomery, the patriarch, had built his empire on medicine and dominance. His son James inherited his precision. His daughter Victoria inherited his hunger. But hunger without boundaries turns to poison. May had watched Victoria enough to see the pattern, the stiff smile that didn't reach her eyes, the way her voice changed when talking about inheritance. Each Sunday dinner ended the same way, her accusing her father of favoritism, her brother of entitlement, her sister-in-law of intrusion. But something had shifted when Catherine announced her pregnancy. It wasn't the news itself. It was the detail that followed. It's a boy. May had been there, polishing silver in the corner, when Victoria's glass slipped in her hand and shattered. She'd laughed it off. Butterfingers, she'd said, smiling tightly, but her eyes were empty and burning all at once. After that, Victoria started visiting the mansion more often. Too often. Always to help, always bearing expensive gifts and warm smiles, always insisting on making Catherine's tea herself. That was when May began watching. At first, she told herself it was paranoia. But then, Victoria had come to the kitchen alone, humming as she pulled a dropper from her handbag. May had caught the faint chemical scent even from across the room. May, Victoria said sweetly, why don't you take a break? I'll finish this. May had smiled and nodded, but she didn't take a break. Instead, she poured out the tea as soon as Victoria left and brewed a fresh one. That's what she'd been doing for 2 weeks, secretly replacing every poison cup before it reached Catherine. But today she had proof. The poison in the cup, the residue, the pattern. She needed to act. When she tried to approach James later that day, he didn't even look up from his laptop. "May, can this wait? I'm preparing for a merger call." "No, sir, it's—" "Then we'll talk later." "Sir, it's about Mrs. Catherine." "May," he interrupted sharply, "you're worrying too much. My sister loves Catherine. Don't start rumors." Rumors. The word stung. She wanted to scream that this wasn't gossip, that a life was at stake, but the words died in her throat. She tried the patriarch next. "Mr. Montgomery," she said, clutching the edge of his desk, "I found something dangerous." Richard didn't even look up from his newspaper. "If it concerns household matters, speak to the head housekeeper." "It's not about the house, sir. It's about Mrs. Catherine, about Miss Victoria." "That's enough." His tone was quiet but firm, the final tone of men used to being obeyed. "You've always been a good worker, May. Don't overstep your role." Overstep. Another word that built the walls higher around her. When she left his office, she was shaking, not from fear, but from fury. How could people with everything be so blind? Later that evening, when she was cleaning the hallway, Victoria appeared like a shadow that already knew everything. "You've been busy, haven't you?" Victoria said, her voice smooth as glass. "Watching me, touching things that aren't yours." May kept her eyes down. "Just doing my duties, ma'am." "Are your duties to gossip, too?" Victoria stepped closer, her perfume heavy, her tone sugar-coated poison. "Because if I hear you've been saying my name in any context other than 'yes, ma'am,' I'll make sure your entire family regrets it. You understand?" May's throat tightened. "I understand." "Good girl," Victoria whispered, her smile tightening. "Now, stay in your place." Victoria walked away, leaving behind the scent of wealth and warning. But May's mind had already made its decision. She wasn't going to stay in her place anymore. That night, she sat on the edge of her narrow bed in the servants' quarters, her brother's old phone clutched in her hands. She replayed Victoria's words in her head until they turned to resolve. She was done waiting for someone else to do what was right. She would get proof, her way. The next morning, she slipped the phone under the kitchen counter, its red light blinking. A single thought guided her. If no one will believe my words, they'll believe her voice. Victoria arrived at the mansion the next afternoon, dressed like mercy itself. White suit, pearls, a soft smile that could convince anyone she had nothing to hide. May's hands shook as she watched her glide into the kitchen, the phone's red light blinking beneath the counter. "I'll make Catherine's tea," Victoria said, setting her handbag on the marble island. "You can take the afternoon off, May." "Thank you, ma'am," May answered evenly, "but Mrs. Catherine asked me to stay close today." The air tightened between them. Victoria opened the tin of tea leaves, humming, but her movements were too sharp, too careful. She measured water, added honey, then reached for her handbag. "Could you grab the honey from the pantry?" Victoria asked. "There's some right there," May said quietly. Victoria froze. For the first time, her hand trembled. "I prefer the other one." May stepped closer. "No need. I'll stay right here. To help." The dropper glinted in Victoria's fingers like the tip of a snake's fang. For a long, awful moment, neither woman moved. "Stop pretending," May said, her voice barely above a whisper. "You've been poisoning her. I found the bottle, the notes, everything." Victoria's laugh broke sharp and brittle. "You think anyone will believe a maid?" "They won't have to," May replied, "because you're about to tell them yourself." The phone's red light blinked, steady as a heartbeat. Victoria's face twisted. "You have no idea who you're dealing with." "Maybe not," May said, "but I know what's right." "Right?" Victoria's laugh turned bitter. "You think it pays bills? You think it earns respect? You think it changes the fact that people like you will always serve people like me? Not forever, May said. The kitchen door opened. James stepped in, pale, his father behind him. We heard everything, Richard said quietly. Victoria spun, face draining of color. Father, please. You tried to kill my grandchild, Richard said. Your own blood. It was supposed to be mine, she whispered. Everything was supposed to be mine. The police arrived minutes later. Victoria's voice cracked between fury and despair as they led her away. You'll regret this, she screamed at May, but the words fell flat against the sound of sirens and the weight of truth. Catherine was rushed to the hospital, trembling but safe. The doctors confirmed that the poison hadn't reached her system deeply, thanks to May's quiet interventions. Another few days, the doctor said, and we would have lost both mother and child. In the waiting room, James sat with his face in his hands. You saved them, he said, when I wouldn't listen, when none of us did. I only did what anyone should, May replied softly. Not anyone, he said. Just you. Weeks passed. The house fell silent without Victoria's voice echoing down the hallways. When Catherine gave birth to a healthy baby boy, she named him Daniel. At the christening, Richard asked May to meet him in his study. I owe you more than gratitude, the old man said. You risked everything to protect us. You don't owe me anything, sir. I owe you the truth, he said. When you warned me, I dismissed you because of where you stand. That was my blindness. From this day on, you stand beside us, not below. He handed her a thick envelope. Inside were documents, education funding, ownership shares, and a new position, Daniel's guardian and family advisor. Sir, I'm not qualified. You will be, he said. We'll make sure of it. Tears blurred her vision. Thank you, sir. Don't thank me, Richard said. Thank yourself for doing what I should have done long ago, listening. Years later, the city skyline burned gold through the glass windows of the Montgomery boardroom. May stood by the long conference table, now wearing a crisp navy suit. Daniel, a toddler, sat on her hip laughing as she handed him a pen to play with. James smiled. You've come a long way, May. I suppose I have, she said, watching Daniel draw circles on the back of a document. You deserve every bit of it, he said. You reminded us that power means nothing without conscience. May smiled, thinking of the woman she'd once been, the invisible maid who'd chosen courage over silence. Sometimes life changes in one heartbeat, one choice, one word spoken when fear tells you to stay quiet. May learned that courage isn't loud, it's steady. It's the quiet decision to stand up when no one stands with you. She discovered that doing what's right might cost you everything for a while, but it gives you something money can't buy: peace, respect, and purpose. Her story is proof that titles don't define worth. Character does. She started as a maid, but her integrity made her a CEO in spirit long before the title found her name. If this story touched you, don't keep it to yourself. Like this video to share May's courage. Comment below, would you risk everything to do the right thing, even if no one believed you? Subscribe to Fortune Rise Stories for more real-life tales of courage, hope, and redemption. Because every fall has a rise, and sometimes it starts with someone brave enough to stand alone.